Hello guys, how's it going? My name is Dalaran and the tuning for Shadowlands is still ongoing. This happens every time with a brand new expansion, especially when the Mythic Plus PvP season and the Raid season is finally released. While we're in the beta, we don't get to see the big picture of how classes and class interactions within a variety of types of content is going to impact the gameplay. And now that we finally have some endgame content to take a look at and take a look at how classes are performing, we're getting some buffs and even a few nerfs for classes. This isn't a full list, and I think I will go back to this list on Tuesday, as Blizzard should have a lot more PvP updates available by then. So we'll talk about any PvP specific changes when it comes to the reset week in just a few days. But let's take a look at some of the updates classes have had just recently. The first update is going to highlight tanks, and tank threat generation is going to be increased by 10%. This is good for new players that are struggling to pick up aggro, and this is good for players that are not playing the best in slot meta specs out there that are trying to compete in high-end Mythic Plus dungeons. Not all tanks are created evenly, and not every tank can pull top DPS meters just to hold all of the aggro. This is a good change going forward for anyone trying to get into Mythic Plus's raiding, and this is going to allow more players to hopefully pick up other specs besides those that have some top end DPS. We have had a change to Death Knights recently, with Unholy's Mastery getting slightly less effective. Overall, I've talked to some Unholy Death Knights, this shouldn't impact the playstyle of the spec too much. Some people feel like the Unholy Death Knight, at least in PvE content, has been a little bit ahead of the pack, so this shouldn't be too much of an issue. Blood Death Knights, however, are getting a nice buff. Together, combined with a threat generation increase and basic abilities from your AoE Blood Boil, your Cleave Hard Strike, your single target Marrow Rend, and even Death Strikes, everything doing more damage should hopefully help you keep more of aggro. In fact, I think Blood Death Knights could maybe use some more buffs when it comes to PvE content, but maybe with better gear they'll end up evening out even more. We have a slight adjustment to Havoc Demon Hunters. There might be a reason why I don't see too many of these guys around, and they simply just don't have the damage to really stand toe-to-toe with some of the top parts in classes. Demon Hunters are not bad by any measure, but a 5% damage buff to all your abilities isn't the worst thing to come to them. And I just want to say that I definitely called this one. Assassination Rogue were either gonna need a little bit of an upgrade in terms of better scaling, better gear, or simply some sort of a buff. And Blizzard is going to be buffing all your damage and abilities by 5%. This is going to be maybe a significant enough change where Assassination Rogues might be more likely to step into Mythic Pluses and into raids. I don't think this is all of a sudden is going to shoot them all the way to the top of DPS meters, but it's a nice change nonetheless. Then we have Restoration Shamans getting a slight tuning nerf. All healing abilities reduced by 4%, and healing rain reduced by additional 10. Talking to a couple Restoration Shamans, this is a drop in a bucket, or a drop in a healing rain mostly. It's not going to be enough to make the spec all of a sudden the worst healer, but they are still going to maintain dominance, I feel like, within this PvE season, and they're still going to be really good. I just think that maybe they're doing way too well even by Blizzard standards. It's good to see Restoration Shamans being viable, especially in Mythic Pluses, and I feel like it might be one of those specs, unless it has some different toolkit. Buffing and nerfing it as they have is the only thing Blizzard is essentially going to be able to do with them. This isn't going to be a change that will make a lot of your Restoration Shamans quit the spec by any measure, but your raid healing has been quite good, so Blizzard wants to tone you down in that department just a little bit. Then we have Destruction Warlocks, and I feel like we haven't seen the spec nearly as much in PvE content. Destruction Warlocks Chaos Bolt damage increase is going to be up by 22 with the Tuesday restart. A lot of PvPers that played through Battle for Azeroth and have survived through the onslaught of Duster Warlocks with Giga Haste Chaos Bolts have already been freaking out on the forums, asking Blizzard to revert this, at least for PvP. Don't do this. But I think Destruction Warlock, compared to, let's say, Affliction, has been a little bit on the forgotten side, especially with your Chaos Bolt. I think if you're someone who is looking to play Destruction Warlock, you should be more emboldened. And it's funny how they didn't have to buff the spec itself, they just had to buff the main ability that's going to be like 99.99% of your damage. So by buffing that, that should make the spec a little bit better, especially in two target cleave situations. So So if you're someone who was looking to play some Destruction Warlock and you felt like you were just surrounded by afflictions left and right, now, after this Tuesday and Wednesday if you're EU, could be the time for you to come back. I do wonder how Blizzard is going to counterbalance this for PvP, or if there will be any kind of counterbalance for PvP at all with this update. Finally, we have ourselves warrior changes, with Arms Warrior getting a PvE-centric buff where Mortal Strike will do 20% more damage. This damage, however, will be reduced by equivalent amount in PvP. Slam at rank 3 will now increase Slam's damage by 50% instead of 25%, so a 25% damage increase for that ability. And Fury Warriors, without anything specific, are just getting a buff 5% more damage baseline. That's the one class that I don't really see that much, is the Warrior. I mean, with beta we already knew that there were going to be some issues with Protection Warrior until they can get much better gear in order to compete against the other tanks. But also Arms and Fury have been kind of on the backside of this expansion, at least in terms of raw DPS. Except for PvP, that's where both of those specs really do compete. The damage they can put out is there, but in terms of consistency for raiding or dungeons, it can be a little bit iffy. I feel like the spec, and both of them really, are going to scale really well with end game gear and end game content. So you shouldn't give up on your warrior just yet. So this is going to be an interesting change. I wonder if they'll get more for warriors in the future. And again, I wonder how much more counterbalancing will Blizzard do for PvP for these two specs in this class alone. Then we have a lot of the other stuff getting buffed and nerfed, mostly within PvE raid content. A lot of the fights in Castle Nathria are still getting tuned. And while we did do a lot of beta testing back on the beta for all the fights, a lot of the fights have been adjusted and reworked a little bit. My guild so far have been able to get through all the bosses but one, and the whole raid has been very enjoyable. So completely understand why Blizzard is making some of the changes to some of these fights. These are going to be a lot of good changes, but generally it's going to be stuff like reduction in health on bosses here and there, make certain mechanics occur less often, like in case of Sludge Fist, in terms of the room getting filled up with rubble, which can be very intense for the groups in terms of the DPS checks that it comes with the fight and such a short time on the fight as well in order to meet. So overall, there's a variety of other changes that are happening, but if they will have more significant changes by the Tuesday reset, then I'll talk about them in this video. But the one important one I can mention, I guess, towards the end is the fact that the raiding environment is going to now offer less gear. Right now, gearing through raids is way too lucrative, and Blizzard really wants to nail down exactly how much gear everything drops. They want to have PvP, Mythic Pluses, as well as raids competitive in terms of gear acquisition, and they're very serious about that idea. So Blizzard is going to be nerfing PvE raiding loot just a hair. So try to get into your raids this week, get them down on normal, or if your guild can do it, heroic, and try to acquire as much gear as you can while you have an extra buff with it. I don't think that's cheating or anything, because Blizzard is going to be fixing it and will have much better gear in Mythics. And I think that's what really Blizzard is trying to nerf it for, is for once the Mythic season begins. But thank you all so much for watching this video. I very much hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know in the comments what do you think about these changes, and I'll see all of you guys in another video.